Hello tomato fans, we have lots of tomatoes that are ripe. Today we're going to pick them and do a taste test together. So if you have a few moments, why don't you join me in the garden? Okay, Owen, this is how we should pick them so we can keep the tops on them. See where the little nodule is right there? Okay, put your finger here underneath this part and then push down on where the nodule is and it'll come off. Okay, and that way we keep the top, and when we have the top, it lasts longer because the bacteria can't get in, versus if you don't have a top like this, the bacteria just go straight through that soft tissue and spoil this quickly. Okay, go. Let's see you do it. Yeah, you're gonna have to practice, Owen. You're gonna have to practice. Here, watch. Let me show you. Come over here. Let's practice on. This one's a little more tricky, so I'll do it. Okay? There's not much room to work. Here, why don't you try it on this one in front? All right. Push down on it. No, this part. Here. Put your finger underneath that part. And no, more. Push down. There you go. From our garden, we have a basket of tomatoes that were vine ripened, and some of the Romas in the basket were harvested throughout the week as they ripen. With the Romas, we've already made a really tasty dish with them. We made an imitation crab ceviche. This weekend we're going to be making some more for a gathering, and hopefully in the greenhouse we can prepare it together. It's been a while since we made any kind of cooking video, and that's something that I look forward to and doing with you once again. So in here we have the black Vernissage tomato. This is a very curious tomato for a lot of people. Like many people, we received the seeds as part of a order from Baker Creek Rare Seeds, and they came as a complimentary gift packet. We have some paste tomatoes, like I mentioned, the Roma tomato, and then this year we have the San Marzano. This is mostly for, I believe, best used as a cooked tomato. So with that, we're still gonna cut into it and look at it and do a taste test together. We have the sweet tomatoes, like this heirloom variety, the Weissbehaarte. This is probably not as sweet as some of the hybrids, but what's nice about heirloom is you can save the seed and get the qualities back. So we'll give it a taste test to see how sweet it is. When it comes to sweet tomatoes, I'm a noob at that. We've already filmed 2 episodes where I taste tested them and didn't find them as sweet as I had imagined them to be. Well, it turns out that they're actually pretty sweet. The middle part of the tomato, the gel part, um, that's very acidic, and if you eat the tomato all together, you're not going to find the sweetness that's in the flesh. So I have that update to report to you guys. Let's go ahead and, oh, before we do that, I always forget about the sun gold because they're kind of tiny. So we also have this hybrid sun gold sweet tomato that we're going to look at today. So let's go and start with the one that a lot of people are probably here for, which is the black Vernissage. And let's go ahead and slice into it and taste test. It's a really pretty tomato. It's got green stripes. Surprisingly, the stripes maintain their color, and it's pretty juicy. It's got a good amount of seeds. So as far as a tomato in the tomato area, I've noticed it has a lot of seeds. So that's what it looks like on the inside. You can let them go a little bit more ripe, and when you do, they get the outside of the tomato and the inside gets a little bit more dark. I like it. It's got a slight sweetness to it, and it has a hint of arugula. So it's a very nice tomato. I would grow this one for its aesthetic and for the taste of it. Let's give it another taste. So yes, that hint of arugula is in there. It's this musky hint. So this is probably, if you're a arugula fan, you'll probably really like this tomato. But once again, this is just one tasting. So with many of these tomatoes, just kind of keep that in mind when we do taste testing and I report back. This is the first testing, just like when we did the sweet tomatoes, we figured out that it's actually different when we taste it some more. But I think this is a pretty good first assessment of this tomato, is that it has a nice sweetness to it, and that arugula musky flavor, that hint of it in it. Yeah, it's a nice one. So this is a very polarizing tomato as far as their fans go. It seems like either people like it or they don't. Some people say it's about the application of the tomato. They say that this is not really a tasting tomato, slicing tomato, but rather to treat it like a paste tomato, like these Romas, and use them in sauces and to cook with them. So in that regard, you can also sun dry them. So we have some black Vernissage tomatoes that we've sun dried. So let's go and do a taste test of the sun dried tomato. They're pretty good sun dried as well. They're more tart, and if you like, I'm trying to remember what it tastes like. These taste kind of like cranberries a little bit. So yeah, they got the tartness and the sweetness in them, and they taste a little bit like cranberry. So so that's the black Vernissage. Let's clean off our work area and move on to the next tomato, and we'll do the Weissbehaarte. Let me clear out my palette. So here is the Weissbehaarte. This is one I'm very excited about. It's a sweet tomato, and we're going to see how sweet it is. It's a really pretty tomato on the inside. It has a good core. There looks like it's got a fleshy core compared with, say, the Vernissage. The Vernissage seems to be seems to be bisected by a core. This one has more of a star-shaped core. The flavors are very bland, and I guess that's because the tomato is more of on the lighter side, and I think the lighter side tomatoes have less flavor. I'm not detecting any sweetness on them. This is one that we've let ripen on the vine for quite a while now, so I guess for the next tomato we'll let it ripen some more and do a taste test off camera, and if there's anything to report differently, we'll come back and report it. Let's just try the flesh. Yeah, it hasn't changed with just the flesh itself. It's more of a bland tomato. Probably something that I have to get used to. I haven't really grown some of these lighter tomatoes, and it's a pretty interesting tomato. So if you're not a huge fan of intense tomato flavors, maybe this tomato is for you. Next year, I hope to grow more of the lighter tomatoes from audience participation. You've given me great suggestions like the great white tomato. I'm very curious about that one, so looking forward to growing that one next year and taste testing them. Okay, let's go and taste test this Sun Gold tomato. This is another new one that we're growing this year, and one that we're excited about as well. So on the Sun Gold, it looks like it's a pretty sweet tomato, even with the seeds and gel and everything. It's very interesting in how it contrasts with the Sun Cherry in that regard. It has less flesh around, but a lot of moisture, liquid moisture inside, and it's one that is all around sweet tomato. We have the Sun Cherry that's here. We'll slice it and look at it on the inside. These ones we allowed to get really, really ripe, and this one is super squishy. So maybe the other key factor is when it comes to sweet cherry tomatoes is to let them get really ripe to where they're super squishy. This one, when you do that, there's less flesh. The flesh looks a little bit less pasty. And let's taste test it all together with the seeds and everything. Yeah, definitely sweet and not as acidic. I've noticed that the Sun Gold compared with, say, this one, the peel of the Sun Gold is not as tough. When I'm chewing on this, I can hear myself crunching on the peel. As someone who's new to sweet tomatoes, I've sure learned a lot from growing and taste testing them. One example is how they differ when you let them sit on the vine some more versus when you harvest it shortly after they've ripened. When you let them sit on the vine, the flesh on the inside gets to break down some more and turn into juice. It mixes in with the center part, which is acidic, and when you test them that way, when you taste them that way, they are more sweet, and it gives you a different result than if you were to taste them shortly after they've ripened. Shortly after they've ripened, there's more flesh. You get more, you get to taste more of the meaty texture. So if you like the meaty texture, then harvest them shortly after they've ripened. But do keep in mind that the center part is where the acidity is, and you'll taste more of that acid than, say, the sweet part. So if you want more of the sweetness, remove the center part and eat just the flesh by itself. The other thing I learned about sweet tomatoes is that there are two components that make up how they taste. Just kind of like lemonade. When you taste lemonade, you taste the tartness and the sweetness. But if you separate the two, you can then taste the sweetness. So if you separate the sugar from the lemonade and you just eat that part, it's going to be sweet. So that's kind of like if you, after you've harvested and you still have a lot of flesh and you just eat the flesh, you're going to get all the sweetness. And that sweetness is measured by the Brix level. For the Sun Gold and the Sun Cherry, they have a Brix of 9 and 10, and I looked that up, and it's 9 and 10 is closer to where watermelons are. Watermelons are 14. So that was something that's very interesting to discover, the Brix scale, because they give you a number of 9 and 10, but it's hard to know what that means until you have something to compare it to. Let's move on to taste testing the paste tomatoes. For example, with this San Marzano, this one is a little bit bigger. We have one that's better for taste testing, this smaller one, which is ripe, and let's cut into it lengthwise. These are grown for their meatiness, so there's less seed and there's less water, because in cooking we want the paste part of it. This is why they're called a paste tomato. We have a Roma tomato that we can compare it to. So let's slice into a Roma. This Roma is going to be really ripe, and this is what a Roma looks like on the inside compared with the San Marzano. The San Marzano has more flesh on the inside, so this makes it a great cooking tomato. I don't think it's going to be a very good tasting tomato, but we'll just give it a taste just to see what it tastes like. It's definitely very fleshy and very pasty, so really good for the kitchen. I think it's only best used if you cook it, whereas the Roma tomato, it's kind of a versatile tomato in many regards. You can use it in sauces and in stews, but you can also use it fresh for things like ceviche and salsas. Let's give this one a taste test. This one's a little bit more ripe, so it's probably going to be a little bit more flavorful than the San Marzano, which is not as ripe as this Roma. This one is got a lot of juice, it's got a lot of flavor. It's bland compared to some of the slicing tomatoes like the Cherokee Purple. But in salsas, we're actually going for the texture rather than the tomato taste. So in salsas and other sauces, you're putting all these marinades for the tomato to absorb, and the paste part, the flesh part, is a good reservoir for all those flavors that you add to it. So that's why we use them in salsas and such. Yeah, a very nice tomato. On the flip side, you can use the slicing tomatoes in salsas like the Cherokee Purple, but when you have a Cherokee Purple, it's best to enjoy it for its really good flavor, and best to enjoy it fresh or sliced on in a burger or a sandwich. So these tomatoes are all interchangeable in their uses. It's just finding what their superstar quality is and enjoying them for them in the right application. So I don't mean to suggest that you can only use one tomato for one type of application. You can totally use a San Marzano in a burger if you had no other tomato to use. So yeah, that's gonna be our episode today. I'm very excited to be able to share all these tomatoes that we've grown with you and grown together, and we have a couple more varieties that are in the garden that we're growing for the first time this year, including the Drusba and the Kellogg's Breakfast to taste test together. And until we get to that, happy gardening and thank you for watching. One of the things you hear me talk about is how we have very intense sun in Southern California. We have dry and arid weather. That allows us to sun dry our tomatoes in the sun, what I do is I slice the tomatoes in half, sprinkle them with a little bit salt. That helps with sweating out the tomato and removing the moisture a lot more quickly. I put them face down on the mesh on the first day. The reason is so that it doesn't get a lot of dust on them, or if it does, it doesn't stick on. When it's wet, a lot of things are gonna get attracted to them, including some insects. But during very hot days, we don't see any insects out there, so we don't have to worry about insects like flies being on them. After the first day, we flip them over and put them out in the sun when they're sun. Take them in at night and repeat until they're sun dried. We're expecting triple-digit temperatures this weekend, and with those temperatures, these tomatoes will sun dry in a couple of days, 3 days at the very latest. And we have lots of sun-dried, actual sun-dried tomatoes to enjoy in salads and pastas, or even to snack fresh.